and welcome to another episode of That's Absurd. Please elaborate, the science/comedy/idiocy podcast. I am one of your two hosts, Julian Huguet.
And I am the other of the double duo that is the hosts of the show. But my name is three, so I'm really the third. I don't know.
So confusing.
Trace Dominguez.
It's so confusing. You're the.
There's so many numbers.
I had to do a lot of base 2 math for this episode, so
no.
But like now, I just think I'm like Trace. You're what makes us like double digits in base 2. You're the you put us over the top, the tick over. But we'll get to all that later. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, this is a show where Trace and I, with our vast years of experience of punching things into Google or calling experts or reading dense articles, we take questions from you, the audience, from each other, from guests if we have them. The sillier, the weirder, the wilder, the better. And we do our very best to find an actual plausible scientifically backed answer, no matter what it may be, no matter how ridiculous or absurd.
All true. These are all facts.
This is a factual statement so far. If we can keep that up through the end of the episode, we'll have done our job.
I agree. Yeah. Let's hope that's the case.
Keep the streak alive. We're at one fact.
As Julian said, if this is your first time, welcome. Thanks for listening to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. We really appreciate it. We get questions from you, the audience. So if while you're listening to this, you want to submit a question, go down into the show notes. There are a variety of different ways you can submit us questions. You can email them. You can call us. Thank you to everyone who has submitted questions. This week we have 2 questions from listeners that we're going to tackle.
Yeah, what's your question, Trace?
My question comes from Tessa, who submitted it via Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, it's super easy to submit a question. You just answer the poll that's on every episode. What's your absurd question? And she wrote, how long would it have taken Westley to build up his immunity to Iocaine powder?
Oh, excitement. Oh, excitement. Before we get into it.
Yeah. We got to get to yes.
Can I geek out a little bit about The Princess Bride?
I mean...
Yes. Okay, good.
Do I have to give you permission?
I'm really excited you tackled this question because this is no exaggeration. I think in 8th grade, I watched The Princess Bride over a 6-month span every single day.
Wow.
I love that movie. I even read the book. And controversial statement.
You did?
The movie was better. But
Ooh.
No, the book's good.
Wow.
The book was not what I was expecting. I don't want to maybe spoil the kind of running joke of the book. If you haven't read it, intend to read it.
But I need to
now.
now.
Well, here's the thing about the book that caught my middle school self completely out was that the book is the only version of the book that exists purports to be an abridged version of a longer book.
Oh, yes.
And so, like, when you read it, the actual author has all these asides about, like, there's all this boring historical stuff that we had to cut out. So just moving on, right? And so, like, I spent a long time looking for the full version, not understanding the joke of the book. But now, in hindsight, I can appreciate that's very funny. Like,
it is very
I
funny.
wonder how much the author giggled thinking, like, people like me would do exactly this and be like, where the heck's the real book? That's funny. I can appreciate that, even though I was on the receiving end.
Yeah, I mean, I've read several books like that, but I feel like if I had read it when I was a kid, it would have been much more confusing to try and understand. Wait, the adult here is supposed to be telling me stuff, and they're telling me, and it's confusing how they're telling it to me. But, I think the movie is inarguably a classic, an instant classic. It's a little campy. It's a little low budget. It's really fun. So I want to get to yes, in case there are people who don't understand who Westley is and what Iocaine powder is. So for the people out there who haven't seen and or read The Princess Bride, Iocaine powder is a poison that is used in a film/book called The Princess Bride. Westley is I don't know if I would call him the main character, but one of the main characters. It does seem to be like the main character. There are a couple of different ones. I don't want to spoil the movie if you haven't seen it. I don't know anyone who hasn't seen it, but I'm also older, so... If you haven't, go watch it. It's great.
Yeah.
It's so good. Long story short, though, there's a dude in the movie. He becomes immune to Iocaine powder, and that is that. It's a poison, one of the more deadly poisons known to man, as they say in the film. Mm-hmm. So the real question that Tessa is asking here is, can you build up immunity to poison? Is it possible? And how long would it have taken him? Now, that how long part, I don't think we can really answer, because it might not be a thing that he could build up a tolerance to, because it's fiction. However, in the movie that he does say, like, he spent a long time doing this. I want to talk just in general about poison and immunity to poison.
Okay.
So, when we were first talking about this, Julian brought up a really nerdy thing, which is Mithridatism. Or Mithridatism.
Yes.
Mithridatism? Mithridatism.
One of those is right, definitely. So we'll just edit all the incorrect ones out. Hey, Kyle, remember to definitely edit out all the incorrect ones later. Great.
I feel like you're winking in your voice tone.
It's good. I don't want Kyle to actually edit it out. Mithridatism, right? What I brought up, because I'm also a history geek, as we've covered, was there was an ancient king named Mithridates back in literally the times of Julius Caesar or slightly before. And he was famous for his love of poisons and for doing purportedly what Westley did in the film, which is build up an immunity to poison to make himself immune.
So let me tell you a bit about the story of Mithridates, because I looked it up because you brought it up. So, tolerance to poison acquired by taking gradually increased doses is called Mithridatism. Is that it's building up this tolerance to poison. Mithridates the Sixth, who I'll just call Six from now on,
M6,
is also known as the Poison King. He lived around 100 BCE in Pontus, which is northeastern Turkey today. This story of him building up immunity to poison is probably, as we say on this podcast all the time, when it comes to stories about royals, politicians, and celebrities, Julian, what do we say?
It's probably apocryphal. It probably never happened.
It's probably apocryphal and never happened. Never believe the PR spin that history gets to put on itself. So the story is Mithridates the Fifth, so Six is daddy,
right?
Five, was poisoned, probably in a conspiracy by his own wife and other people. So Mithridates the Fifth was likely killed by his wife, which, by the way, clearly, Six's mom. So Six's mom killed Six's dad. And so Six and his brother Crestus, who were children at the time, had then their mom, who had killed the dad. Mom took over the kingdom because they would have taken over Pontus, but they were too young, so the widowed wife took over as regent. Then Six was nearly killed as the victim of several quote-unquote accidents.
Oh my gosh.
This is like full Lion King.
Wow. And
Six fled, came back when he was older, and the mom and brother were still in Pontus. No Hakuna Matata going on here at all. And he became so paranoid of poison because his dad was poisoned and his mom probably did the killing and his brother was all kind of okay with it. So he would take poison antidotes just in case every day.
Yeah. It's probably cheaper than therapy.
Yeah, maybe. Depends. So he would allegedly drink poison and then drink antidotes. And so I think that's where it likely comes from, that he was like drinking poison and building up immunity. What likely happened is he's inventing and trying to figure out the antidotes for any known poisons to Pontus and Rome and other kind of Mediterranean cultures of the time. So he starts dabbling in toxicology and he's finding these antidotes for known poisons, which is pretty awesome. And he's doing it, though, in not a great way. Turns out Six, not a super cool guy. He was allegedly feeding the poisons to animals and prisoners and then giving them different mixtures to try and see if they would live. Now, I know in movies you drink a poison, you drink an antidote, and you walk away totally fine. Similar to like you get CPR, wake up because your heart's going, and then continue running after the bad guy. That is, neither of those things happen in real life. If you've drinking a poison, you probably will never be the person you were before you had the poison. Like, it can really mess up your insides.
You know, I had never thought about it, but that makes perfect sense. Like, of course, if you drank something that's probably like wreaking havoc on your nervous system or some internal organs, just like a little neutralizing like shot glass of liquid isn't gonna undo the damage. Yeah, of course.
No.
Of course.
But in a film totally makes sense.
Yeah,
in reality,
that's fine.
Probably not. So those animals and prisoners were not living well.
You can be mostly dead so long as you're still somewhat alive and still come back.
Inconceivable. So from a website called World History Encyclopedia, quote, numerous ancient authors, including Pliny the Elder, claimed that he created and regularly ingested a universal antidote for all identified toxins, and it became known as mithridate or mithridatium. Mithridate likely contained 50 ingredients or more, and various recipes have survived throughout history. So many people want to know what it is that this guy was drinking, and he kept it as a closely guarded secret because he was afraid of everyone. And so, in one writing, De Medicina, it contains a recipe. I'm just going to read it really fast. It contains cosmary, sweet flag, hypericum gum, sagapenum, acacia juice, Illyrian iris, cardamom anise, gallic nard, gentian root, dried rose leaves, poppy tears, parsley, cassia, saxifrage, darnel, long pepper, storax, castoreum, frankincense, hippostasis juice, myrrh. Popanax. I swear I didn't make up any of these. Malabathrum leaves, the flower of round rush, turpentine resin, galbanum, cretin, carrot seeds, nard, opabalsamum. I'm running out of words. Shepherd's purse, rhubarb root, saffron, nice, ginger, cinnamon, and they would pound it up and take it with honey, and it was to be against poison. They would give it about a size of, quote, an Egyptian bean.
Oh, that means nothing to me now.
That is, but,
modern North American sensibilities. That I don't know. I guess all the people in the Mediterranean would know exactly how big an Egyptian bean is. I have no clue. Are they huge?
Look,
are they like a mega M&M, or are they?
Nice throwback.
Thank you.
I was going to throw back to, is it a teaspoon? Does anyone know what a teaspoon is? Will we know what they are in the future when we finally stop using this stupid measuring system? No. No one will know what that is, because it doesn't make sense.
Congrats. You've got the cure to all poisons, but nobody knows the dose. You idiots.
So the thing about this is some of these, like sweet flag, that is toxic and also psychoactive. So he is drinking this often, and it's a toxic psychoactive material. Hypericum? Either way. St. John's wort is what it's known as really in English, can cause photosensitivity. Literally, it can make the skin inflamed if you sit in the sun and eat it beforehand. So it also has psychoactive effects, and some of those might be beneficial. So there are things in this that are poison and or quote-unquote toxic, and not in the wellness way, in the actual way.
Okay.
Allegedly, he kept a dose of deadly poison in the hilt of his sword, which actually people then critiqued in the history writings. They're like, why would he do that? Because if he's taking an antidote every day, why would he keep a poison on him? Because he's already drank the antidote that morning. But I think a lot of this comes down to what we started with, which is the PR, the mythos, the apocryphal story. It doesn't matter what was in the stuff. He made it known. So much so that 2,000 years later, we're still talking about it, that this dude was drinking quote-unquote poison or antidotes or whatever every single day, and he kept it on him all the time, and he was always ready, and it's just really good security theater.
Yeah,
you know?
That's exactly what I'm thinking. This is kind of an aside, but like part of me wonders if he intentionally has this, oh gosh, I almost cringed thinking of the word, but branding.
Yeah.
So people won't even attempt to poison him.
Right.
Or how much of it is people like those in Rome are going to, hear stories and run with it, and eventually like a historian like Pliny the Elder writes it down, and just because you need these great mythical sort of enemies around you and strange kings and fascinating tales to tell, how much of it is column A and column B?
Right, exactly. And it is likely all apocryphal, or at least spun in some way to make the people who wrote the history either look good or bad, just like anything. But the story ends in all of the different tellings as he couldn't die. He was attacked at the end of his life, and he had to be killed either by a servant, by himself, by someone else had to kill him because he tried to drink poison, but he couldn't. This actually was part of the Third Mithridatic War with Rome, where Pontus was defeated by Pompey, and it was crazy because he was driven out by the Romans, and his own sons were like, we're cool with that, bye, and took up sub-kingdoms. So then he went back, and he had the older son killed and took over his kingdom.
Oh, no.
This is all, Six is also not a great dude.
Six killed 7?
Defeated, 6 killed 7 and 8. So his youngest son, he tried to get a rebellion going, and his younger son defeated him. And this is where it gets interesting, because he had a wife and daughters, and he tried to attempt suicide by poison, which doesn't make sense, but he didn't die, so then he tries to kill himself. And maybe he was killed himself, maybe he was killed by rebels, maybe he was killed by a guard. The stories vary. But either way, he didn't die from the poison. And in reality, they think, historians are like, chances are he wasn't like immune to poison at all. And in fact, instead, he had a dose of poison on him, just in case, and he split that dose with his wife and daughters, who did die of poison, and he took the rest. But because he was actually, allegedly, all the writings describe him as quite a large man who exercised a lot to keep fit, because again, he was paranoid, and so you need a large dose of poison to kill a large person. The dosage makes the poison, and it wasn't a large enough dose to kill him, so he was just severely weakened and was likely then killed. So that's the history part.
Hooray!
Of this. The thing to take away from all of that 10 minutes of history, is can you build up tolerance to poison? Because this is the most famous example outside of this movie that we're talking about of a person building up tolerance to poison. But all of the history is like, did he?
Yeah.
Was he just taking antidotes every day? Because there are stories that are like, he was putting poison in the glasses of his guests, and he was doing all of this, like, it was just all of this mythos. And he was like drinking poison in front of his guests to show them his strength. And it's like, but I didn't find any of that when I was really digging into it. I did find those stories, but I didn't find a lot of like primary sources or even like several secondary sources that say that. I'm not a historian though. If you are one, come and tell me.
Can you imagine getting invited to dine at the house of the Poison King?
Yeah.
Every glass they bring you, you'd be like, no, thanks, I'm good.
I'm good, thanks. I'm fine. Yeah, I'm all right. Water for me.
Oh, no, I ate a lot before we left.
I ate a lot.
Yeah, whoo.
I am stuffed to the gills.
That's all you,
wow.
Mithy Bud, Myth 6.
So, Julian, do you know anything about poison? Other than the difference between poison and venom. You know, that one I think is like baseline. You know,
we have to have covered that by this point, right?
Poison knowledge. Venom is it bites you. Poison is you bite it.
Right. Or find it under the sink and drink it. Also poison.
Don't do that.
Honestly, no. This is a total blind spot for me.
This took me a long time to research because it was so interesting and I knew so little about it. Me too. I was like, I know what poison is. When you say poison, I'm like, oh, poison. You know, and we see it in the news. People like awful humans who live in other parts of the world. I mean, us too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But like poison people, usually with heavy metals and, you know, polonium, for example.
Antifreeze.
Just pulling that out of the air. Antifreeze,
oh,
yeah.
right. Oh, polonium.
Yeah.
I see where you're getting. Yeah.
So, yes, that you can call that poison. It's not really poison, though. Poisons have existed throughout human history, and they're usually natural. They come from minerals, animals, or plants. And the most ancient mention I could find was the ancient Sumerians in modern-day Iraq. That might have been like 6,500 years ago, 4,500 BCE or so. They had mentions of poison and people being poisoned. Ancient Egyptian papyrus, there's actually one in the Louvre that writes, "Speak not the name of God under penalty of the peach tree." And the reason they mention that is because peach pits contain prussic acid, which is cyanide, a poison, very deadly poison. And it comes from the pits of peaches. You'd have to, go put them through a process to get it out of them. But it's something that we've known for a long time. And ancient Romans, they documented a lot of poisons. Historians documented the deaths of famous people and royals and politicians. And like we said, Pliny the Elder, who wrote about voluntary euthanasia for the elderly and other poisons that were used in both good ways and bad. So again, mineral, animal, and plant. In mineral, we have salts of lead, mercury, copper, arsenic, antimony. These are known about even in ancient Roman times. The fumes of things like lead and silver and gold were known to be toxic. Things like mercury were known to be poison and toxic as well, and were used in the forming and shaping of hats into the Victorian era. And that would be, you ever heard Mad as a Hatter? It's because they are literally pressing mercury into the felt to like shape it. And then mercury just gets absorbed through your skin as you push it smaller and smaller. It just gets in there and can cause madness. Arsenic, which is a pretty common poison name we hear about in films, that's actually an elemental poison. It's found naturally in the environment. It can get in drinking water, but it's a metal. It's actually a metal. So really interesting.
To be healthy, I prefer my poisons to be all natural.
Yeah, me too. I'm more of an animal plant kind of poison.
I like organically sourced poison.
So with animals, we've got things that are actually more venomous. Spiders and snakes and toads, salamanders, even bull's blood at one point was considered a poison. It's not actually a poison, but they would put like bull's blood in things to poison other people. It didn't actually poison.
Weird.
The most common poisons that you hear about come from plants. And the reason these plants evolve poison, I think anybody in the sciences could guess, right? It's to fight off predators.
Yeah.
It's to keep the reason caffeine exists is to keep things from eating that plant. Didn't work. The reason cannabinoids exist is to keep things from eating that plant. Didn't work.
Whoops.
The reason poisons exist is the same. It's just a pest control method. It's a way to fight off predators.
Well, there is the theory in like evolutionary biology that some plants, right, these substances that we have now since used, like we cultivate them, cannabinoids, nicotine, caffeine, right?
Capsaicin, the spiciness.
Yeah, it's more like a plant strategy at a certain point to actually get like humans or other animals to consume them and then spread the seeds farther out. Not that plants make decisions about strategies, but, you know, like that's how it came
They're
to
out there
be.
being like,
Do I kill this guy or send him on the trip of his life?
Porque no los dos, one than the other.
Mushrooms. Anyway.
So plants with the most common poisons. There are several. I'm sure you could name one. I bet you if you just pick a poison that you can think of, especially if you're super into, I don't know, like Victorian era stuff, you can probably think of a poison off the top of your head. Well, you want to try?
I went classical. I've been thinking hemlock for a long time.
Hemlock? Yeah, totally. Killed Socrates.
Yeah.
Very important poison in kind of literary history. Another one that you think of a lot is opium.
Oh.
Is a poison. But there's also things like hellebore and yew extract, belladonna.
Oh, nightshade.
Yeah, exactly. Nightshade, mandrake. Those are all belladonna alkaloids. There's all these different things that we associate. Again, I say all these, they sound literary. Like they just are things that when we hear those words, we think, ooh, somebody wrote a book where somebody was poisoned with hellebore or belladonna. It's just, I say romantic, but I don't mean romantic. I mean, like, it is romanticized because poisons are a very interesting part of human history. Interestingly, Romans didn't seem to use cyanide, but they did use a lot of the plants I just mentioned. Peaches are native to Persia, Samaria, Iraq. Romans didn't seem to know the difference between poisonous mushrooms and fungus. So they wouldn't eat mushrooms, really, because they wouldn't be able to tell if they were poison or not, I guess. I mean, I'm sure they would eat them, but like they weren't like, oh, this is a poisonous mushroom. This one is a not poisonous mushroom that I could find. I found writings saying they didn't know the difference, but I didn't find writings that would contradict that. Yeah. And there were professional poisoners in ancient Rome as well. People who were your go-to to go and get somebody poisoned. Hemlock and honey was favored by the witch Canidia, and actonite was called the mother-in-law's poison. So that's pretty fun.
Historically, there's a lot of ties between poison and specifically women. A lot.
Yeah, it's associated with women.
Yeah, like the women's preferred way of execution. But I'm going to be honest, if I had to like face someone in single combat, or maybe just like, boop, just a little drop, in a drink. I mean, it's just the smarter option, let's be real.
Yeah, it's much more economical.
Yeah.
It's better for you, better for them, maybe.
Easier to get away with the murder, right? Like,
if you don't have to actually go and hurt yourself.
Get all covered in blood. I just want to say. But it's funny that there's the mother-in-law's poison. I wouldn't be surprised if the more this goes on, the more... Mithridates V's wife was his poisoner, right? Like, so yeah, that comes up a lot historically.
And I didn't go and look into if that's misogyny, but I'm gonna just assume
I think
that there's some of that there.
I think it's tinged with like these women can't trust them, they're sneaky. Yeah, I think it's
exactly. Oh, this woman is too powerful because she poisoned, and it's like ugh. Anyway, I also wanted to similar ughing. I wanted to get away from the Eurocentricity of most of the Western knowledge on this, so I looked specifically for ancient Chinese medicine. There's a lot of poisons there as well. Cinnabar, which is actually a mercury-based compound. Again, actonite, mother-in-law's poison. The bezoar, which you would recognize from the Harry Potter lore. That's a ox gallstone. Cannabis, which is native to East Asia, was considered a poison. A lot of these, though,
that's funny because I thought if you had so much cannabis you died, you'd technically been stoned to death.
No, inconceivable. A lot of these, especially in ancient Chinese medicine, were considered both medicinal and poison. That's pretty common. Like a little bit of poison under a dose might be helpful. Pharmacology, or the word pharmacy in English, comes from the Greek word pharmakon, which means both remedy and poison. So it's not just like the Chinese out here poisoning people. It was just, we wanted to learn what these very powerful things that we were finding in plants and in animals and in minerals could do for us. Sometimes it would kill us, but maybe it would make you stronger, or maybe it would do this thing for you. In the ancient Americas, the cashew, which we've talked about in previous episodes, the fruit is okay, but the raw nut contains urushiol, which is a toxin, and it was known likely to indigenous tribes to make them ill. Cassava, also known as yucca, when you eat a yucca fry, that contains two chemicals, linemarin and linemarase, which again evolved as repellents for animals, but when it's chewed, crushed, they mix and release cyanide, so you can die from the cyanide gas.
Whoops.
So the ancient Amazonians, amazingly, realized if they ground the cassava on a washboard-like shredder of rocks or fish teeth, the cyanide gas would come out into the air and not into their mouth. So then they could rinse it, squeeze the cassava, drain it, clear the plant of the linemarin and linemarase and other toxins, and then dry it in the sun and cook it. Who figured that out? Amazing.
Love how determined humans are to eat anything.
Yeah. Yes.
There's so many things that it's like the cashews, right? Oh, this is deadly. But what if I try something different to prepare it? Then can I eat it?
What?
I just know
what
it's
if I
delicious.
dip it in water? Here, right? Aaron, try this. Aaron,
All
try
right.
this now.
Thanks. What is it?
Aaron Aronson's dead. Okay, now next I'm going to put it over the fire. Aaron, try this.
Aaron Aronson Jr.
Come try this. Oh, he lived.
Oh.
Okay, next time let's cook it over the fire again. That was delicious.
Yeah, and now we'll write a cute Christmas song about it.
Interestingly, cassava, to your point about, it's like a staple crop now. So they figured out not only how to eat it, but they made it like a base crop for the southern hemisphere of the Americas for thousands of years, which is pretty awesome. So poisons work in a bunch of different ways. We've talked about a lot of poisons, but basically poisons work in different mechanisms, but they generally follow the alkaloid path, if you will. It's basically a chemical, binds to something in your body, and it binds in such a way that causes us damage. So anything that is a naturally occurring organic compound that contains at least one nitrogen atom and is basic is an alkaloid. Caffeine is an alkaloid. Nightshade, solanine in tomatoes, tobacco, peppers, and potatoes, those are all alkaloids. And again, they're insecticides. They're like trying to stop you from...
Cyanide. Cyanide's just carbon and nitrogen, so I guess that would be an alkaloid too then, by that definition.
Right. It's got at least one nitrogen atom and is basic.
Yeah.
So the alkaloid of hemlock is cononine, I think is how to pronounce it. It allegedly tastes bitter, herby, grassy, mildly lemony, kind of dirt-like. It smells very intense and unpleasant, and when you consume it, it affects your motor nerves, causing paralysis and asphyxia.
I love how you have the whole flavor profile. Was somebody, as they were dying, describing, like,
apparently,
it's got notes of earth to
It's very earthy. I can't breathe. And so what it does is it affects the nerves, and it does that through a mechanism of action, which means that alkaloid is binding to something that would have likely done something else, which I'll come back to in a second.
Okay.
Cyanide, which you just mentioned, the mechanism of action is that it binds to the ferric ion cytochrome oxidase 3 within the mitochondria.
Right.
Basically, it disrupts the electron transport chain within the cells, and so you cannot make energy and make ATP from oxygen, which means you basically are starving your cells and you die.
Yeah.
It's not awesome. And so it just gets in the way of your body doing its natural process.
Right.
Because iron is used in hemoglobin to move oxygen around. And so this binds to the iron in your cells so that they can't move oxygen around. If it can't move oxygen around, you can't burn it to make energy. You can't burn it to make energy. Your cells die.
Yeah, you're going to run out of that energy pretty quick. Yeah, and your brain is going to build up like toxicity inside the neurons, and same for your muscle. Yeah, it's going to go bad in a hurry.
So that cyanide as a poison suffocates you at the cellular level.
Yikes.
And I point that out specifically. Do you think that's something that you could become immune to by taking it often? If I took it a bunch of times, does the chemistry not chemistry anymore?
I'm going to go with absolutely not.
Right. Exactly.
No way.
So, arsenic can cause cell injury and death by multiple mechanisms. It's not an alkaloid because it's a heavy metal, as we mentioned. It's also not organic, but it interferes also with cellular respiration, causing impaired gluconeogenesis. Essentially, a similar idea. It stops you from making glucose energy through the pyruvate oxidation pathway and the tricarboxylic acid cycle, basically the Krebs cycle.
Right.
So it's chemical reactions that help us make energy with carbohydrates and fatty acids, and it stops that, again, by just getting in the way of other stuff.
Yeah. Basically throwing a wrench into the cellular machinery is what all of these are doing.
Right. And so I've got a bunch of other ones, but just in the sake of time, I think you get the idea.
Yeah.
So these poisons are like skeleton keys for some chemistry in our cell, and they bind with or undo something that would have happened had they not been there. And so building up a tolerance for a poison seems, in my mind, very unlikely.
Yeah.
However, I mentioned venom. Venom works differently than poison.
Okay.
Poison, like cyanide, interferes chemically with the cell. It blocks cell respiration. But something like venom attacks the body through a different process, the protein channels. So it's basically an enzyme that breaks down tissue. So a snake would bite you, get venom in your body, and in that poison, or that venom in this case, is enzymes that are pre-digesting you, like super saliva. Some have non-enzymatic proteins, but a lot of them have enzymes. If you dose with sublethal bits of venom, that is different than poison. Alcohol is a poison, technically, and as most people who drink alcohol know, low levels of alcohol is fun for some people, high levels can kill, but if you consume it regularly, your body starts to adapt, and you have a, quote, higher tolerance for alcohol. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're not getting affected by it, but your liver is making enzymes that break down the alcohol more readily, because it's prepared to break it down.
Yes, that makes sense.
Venom works similarly, where like if you were to dose yourself with sublethal bits of venom, you might be able to build up a tolerance to it.
That sounds like your immune system,
Yes.
starting to recognize it, right? If it's an enzyme, then it's a protein that's got a specific shape to do a specific job, and if your body can recognize some feature of it and attack it and change the shape of that protein, you can render it inert.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, we all are quite familiar with the word spike protein.
Yay.
On the Corona-19 virus. It's vulnerable if you have antibodies to it. It is a protein like any other. That's what antibodies do. So what if, to go back to Tessa's question, Iocaine isn't a poison? What if Iocaine is a venom?
Like some powdered snake venom
Play
or something?
you
Yeah.
a clip.
Inhale this, but do not touch.
I smell nothing.
What you do not smell is called Iocaine powder. It is odorless, tasteless, dissolves instantly in liquid, and is among the more deadly poisons.
I was just really happy there to see that again. So I was like prepared to watch the remaining hour and 10 minutes of that movie, but okay.
No, it's excellent. Okay. Venom is odorless. Venom's color is often white, yellowish, or colorless. Venom, when seized from snakes, can be powdered. Venom dissolves instantly in liquid. Quote, the constituents of snake venom can be preserved for a longer period if dried into a solid crystal form and stored properly. This crystal mass dissolves readily in blood and water. Inconceivable!
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
One of the most toxic venoms to mice is the inland taipan, Oxyuranus microlepidatus.
That's the snake, I assume?
That's the snake.
Okay.
Let me play you a quick clip.
Because Iocaine comes from Australia, as everyone knows. And Australia is entirely peopled with criminals. And criminals are used to having people not trust them, as you are not trusted by me, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you.
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
Wait till I get going. Where was I?
Australia.
Yes, Australia.
Guess where the inland taipan is from, Julian?
Oh, the home of all venomous snakes under your bed right now, listener.
That's
right. Australia, of course.
Australia. So the inland taipan's venom contains a spreading factor called hyaluronidase enzyme. It increases the rate of absorption of the venom. I'm reading now from the University of California, San Diego. The inland taipan is the most venomous terrestrial snake known to man, perhaps the most toxic of all snakes in the world. Envenomation signifies a true medical emergency. The venom can cause neurotoxic, hemolytic, and coagulopathic reactions. Paralysis and death could ensue rapidly. Inconceivable! Julian, do you want to make the point for me here?
Paralysis and death
Could ensue
rapidly.
Like from an odorless, whitish yellow or colorless, powdered substance that dissolves instantly in liquid.
So what we're learning
from
is
Australia!
What we're learning is Westley does not know the difference between venom and poison. That's so disappointing. I look at his character in a completely different light now. Or he was doing it just to trick his opponent in this battle of wits.
Right?
I love this pop culture detective work that you've done.
Thank you. So, in reality, Iocaine powder is totally fictional. And I do want to mention, I didn't specifically mention that venom having a taste, because venom does have a taste. It tastes sweet or tangy, like a tangy water, people describe it as. The thing is, you couldn't drink venom. You can drink it, because the venom proteins are broken down in the stomach. That's what the stomach is for. So you'd really not be able to drink venom to die. And I was like, oh man, so it can't be. But then I discovered something.
What?
Let's go back to this clip.
Oh.
Inhale this, but do not touch.
I smell nothing.
What you do not smell is called Iocaine.
He poisoned him right there. That was it. That was the moment.
I'm so glad you're so excited.
Oh my gosh, Westley! Oh, the man was already dead.
Like anyone in the first year of Chem Lab, the first thing you're taught in Chem Lab is to never put your nose over anything.
Don't go whiffing stuff.
Always waft.
Oh.
And Vizzini, he just, I smell nothing.
Oh,
And it's
my
like-
word. Wesley, you sly dog.
I know. It's almost like he's a pirate. And he lied to him. And the whole battle of wits was not the cups at all, but Vizzini's trust in a pirate.
Who brought his own poison to a battle of wits?
Yes,
Vizzini.
and suggested the battle of wits.
Oh.
Well, I guess Vizzini suggested it, but he was just like, I'm going to bring this thing. And okay, so there's a study from 2005 called Hypersensitivity to Airborne Spitting Cobra Snake Venom. I know it's not the taipan venom, but if Vizzini inhaled the venom and didn't drink it, it would still venom because it goes right into the bloodstream.
Amazing. Amazing.
Inconceivable!
It's so good. Oh.
So, Tessa, we probably can't build up a tolerance to poison. You can antidote them and pre-antidote them, which is what Mithridates did. But Westley, you could maybe bring up a tolerance to venoms, but he may not have even had to. He might have killed him right there at the beginning, turned around, done nothing with the cups, and just put regular old wine out there.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes later, Vizzini died because he doesn't need him to pick a cup. He just needs him to die so he can get his lady back. So, Rob Reiner, please, let's talk about this. Is this what happened? I need to know.
Much like Mithridates, perhaps, having people believe that he is immune to this Iocaine powder adds to the mythos of the dread pirate Roberts. Oh, this is great. Oh, this was...
Thank you. Thank you.
I
very much.
loved all of this.
So, thank you, Tessa, for your question. Let's take a quick break and just breathe it out a little bit.
Wait, I have one important historical thing I want to question you about.
Oh.
When Mithridates, eventually took the throne again from his mother, right? Did he swear vengeance on his mother? Do you know?
I don't know.
Did he, when he met his mother, did he say, hello?
I feel like...
My name is Mithridates the Sixth.
God. Oh, no.
You killed my father.
You killed my father.
Prepare to die. Is there any record of that?
Let's go to a break.
Okay.
Let's just go get Kyle. Julian, give me your best dinosaur roar.
Oh, God, an asteroid! It's horrible!
Wow, that was not where I expected that to go. We're popping in before the show to tell you about I Know Dino. It's a dinosaur podcast.
You know, we think of those dinosaurs being this thing that's been dead for tens of millions of years. Even so, studying dinosaurs can still teach us stuff that is relevant to the world today.
Yeah, like climate models to help us understand global warming.
Migration patterns of dinosaur lineages, they tell us about Earth's changing continents.
We can also study dinosaur diets, what plants lived then, and maybe what animals and how they interact.
And, this is super cool, many dinosaur injuries, paleopathologies, they're the first known occurrences of diseases.
And they talk about all this kind of stuff on I Know Dino. It comes out every week with new dinosaur stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Like, I hadn't heard of a lot of these, which is pretty cool.
You can find I Know Dino on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are. And if you found us, you can probably find them. Go check them out.
All right, welcome back to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. I hope we had an ad break there. If not, just keep breathing. You'll get through it. We're still working on it.
Oh, that was so fun. I'm so happy, right now.
Yeah, it was... When the research comes together like that, it does not happen every time, and it was just so pleasing.
That was great.
So, Julian, let's move on to your question.
Yes.
What was your question today?
My question this week comes from Mason, who asks, can you still do maths using a unary base 1 numeral system?
What does that even mean?
Well, maths is how British people say math. It's short for mathematics.
Oh, because mathematics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they just cut out all the attics.
Oh, do you mean the unary part, the base 1 part?
Yeah, I meant that part,
right.
But, both are important.
Okay, sorry.
For full under comprehension and understanding.
Mason...
What is a system, Julian?
Mason expands. Mason includes, could you still do engineering? Would computers still work? Could we get to the moon that way? So I think he definitely has a very computer science-centric approach. So I took that one as well. But first, let's talk a little bit about base 1, base 2, base 10, right? Obviously, most people don't examine this in their day-to-day lives. We've all pretty much grown up with base 10 now, especially if you use the metric system. You're very familiar with it.
Imperial system. This podcast, we're just like an anti-imperial system
we are.
podcast. We really don't like it. Fair.
Except in
also.
aviation. Exactly.
Yeah, except in aviation.
One caveat. Yes, so base 10, right, is just how do you write down numbers, right? Numbers are useful for if I've got a group of things and I want to express how many things I have to somebody else in a meaningful way. We have to agree on what these symbols mean and how to use them. And so there have been people from all over the world, in the past that have used different bases. We talked about in an episode when we talked about time, cultures that would use base 12 because they would use the bones on their fingers to count, or base 60 or base 5. But what all these mean basically, no pun intended, is, when you have a single digit, the values of that digit can range from 0 to 1 less than whatever your base is, right? So for base 10, it's from 0 to 9. And then when you go 1 more than 9, well, now you need a new digit. So you move over 1 digit, and now you start counting from there, right? 1 to 9, and then you move over another digit.
As they say in elementary school, at least in the U.S., as I recall, it's the ones place, then the tens place, then the hundreds place. So every 9 digits in each, you have to move up 1.
Right. So
add 1.
If we were to take the example of 1010, 1010, the first one means you have 1 1000s, and then the 0 means you have no hundreds, and then the next one means you have 110, and the final 0 means you have no ones, right? So you add them all up, and what do you get?
So you're going through all the places,
Right.
Got it.
1010. Base 2, instead of going from 0 to 9, you can only go from 0 to 1. So
so this would be computer language, binary.
Exactly. And there's a reason computers use it. We'll get into that. But you go count 0, 1. If you want to go up to 2, guess what? You're going to have to move over to the next digit and start using that. And so in base 2, if we have that same 1010 or 1010, actually, because it's not representing 1010 things. So 1010 instead would represent just 10.
Yeah.
So that first one represents how many 8s do you have? Well, I have 1 8. Then the next 0, that's how many 4s do you have? I have no 4s. The next 1 is how many 2s do you have? I have 1 2.
1 2.
And then I have 0 1s. So add the 8 and the 2 together and it's worth 10. So it takes me 4 digits to represent just
10,
which I could represent with 2 digits in base 10.
Right. Which is useful for us counting things that we experience in our everyday lives. But computers, I know you're going to talk about it, but that's where I keep coming back to with binary. Computers don't care about that. They're not looking at the world and being like, are there 8 apples here? They're trying to solve, math calculations all day. And so for them, it's easier in this way to have an on and an off switch.
Although with computers, there are a lot of issues that have to be solved when using binary. And so one thing I learned while doing this, I have to give credit to a YouTuber named Jan Misali, is that computers, they don't see 8 apples and go, you have 8 apples. Computers go, you have so close to 8 apples, it's indistinguishable from 8. So I'm going to say you have 8 apples. And we'll get to that later.
Oh, that's fun. That's interesting.
So if we were to continue this pattern, though, for our base systems, right, in the same way, a unary system is impossible because you tick over in base 2, you can't actually write out the number 2 when you get to, the value of 2. You reset that first digit to 0, and then you move over to the 2's place and you put a 1, right? But you can never write 2. Well, in base 1, your options are between 0
and 0.
And 0. Well, less than 1. Infinitely close to 1, I guess. But
I guess.
Yeah. But not 1. You can't actually reach 1. So how do you count integers in this system, right? It's in the strictest sense, it is not possible to use it in a day-to-day system, right? It in the same way that we use base 10, base 2, whatever. But you could kind of cheat and use it if you wanted to for computations, if you could go up to 1 but no higher, for each digit. And so if I wanted to represent 1010 objects, I would need a row of just 1010 ones. And then you just add them all up.
Got it.
That's all.
So a unary system, if you could distinguish between nothing and something.
Right.
As long as you could distinguish. It's almost like it's not even a 1. It's 0 and anything else.
Yeah.
It's either 0 or not 0. But it's not 1. It could be literally a dot.
So you could use this for computer science. And actually, it wouldn't be difficult to actually make it possible. The problem comes with practicality. And for this, I want to give a massive shout out to actual literal friend of the pod, Greg Fish.
Yay, Greg.
He has a master's in computer science. He's a software architect. And computer science is, to me, it's all magic, at a certain point. Until I find very smart people to explain it to me. And Greg is one such smart person. And so I was asking Greg, okay, can computers use unary? And he's like, well, if you think about it, they already are. Because the way that we represent numbers in a computer is with electrical circuits and voltages, right? And so you've got a transistor, which is, you can think of as like a little gate for electrons. And if the gate is shut, the computer interprets that as a 0 value. And if the gate is open, that's a 1, right?
Yeah.
So you can see why we could use unary with that, right? If we're going to have just all our values can either be 0 or 1, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the problem arises in the fact that we would need as many bits, because a bit is that 0 or 1. Yeah. You'd need as many bits as the size of your number, right?
Ooh, yeah. And you'd be limited if you ever tried to do something more than that.
Right.
It would have to somehow. Oh, yeah.
major problem in computing is just literally having enough memory to hold all the values, enough like bits to store the numbers that you're working with and then use them in calculations and store them again and then use them again, right? And as you do really complex math, you need super powerful computers that can actually manipulate these numbers and the storage space to hold them when you're, between working with them. It's a lot. We have very clever methods of using base 2 to cut down on those storage requirements, which would mean if we were using base 1, our computing power would be absolutely kneecapped. Greg described it as it would be exponentially worse, more than exponentially worse than how it is. And so here's where we're going to get into how computers, surprisingly, are not maybe as exact as you might think.
Yeah, that's surprising to me. You sort of teased it earlier.
Yes.
Also, I just want to give you a little shout out here. I've had nerd friends my whole life, and I've never heard binary described quite so simply. And I just want to give you a shout out because I keep thinking about for the first time ever, I think I get how binary works.
Yeah, it literally kept me up last night thinking I'm going to have to do math in an audio format again. I'm like, do I tell listeners to write out the digits so they can visually
keep doing this
follow
to yourself,
along?
but...
I don't know why. I'm so sorry. Okay, but let's talk about how computers have been engineered. Really, the standards have been set to make this very limited binary system actually really, really flexible and really clever. So you can, represent numbers in a computer in the way that we talked about, where it's like, okay, if I've got a 1, in this place, that's worth 2, and another 1 here, that's worth 4, and just keep on going and build that out to as big as, you want to be. But it's very space inefficient. But the IEEE, which sets standards for how, electronic devices should be used and things like how internet protocols work and a lot of stuff in your day-to-day life, the IEEE has been huge in influencing. They came up with a brilliant system that's sort of inspired by scientific notation, right?
Oh.
So in scientific notation, we have to deal with really large or really small numbers all the time. And it's a huge pain to write out, if I've got one
zeros.
Quadrillion, to write out 1 and then all the zeros after it. So it'd be easier if I just wrote 1 times 10 to whatever the exponent is, however many zeros I need afterwards, right?
Right.
Same for a really small number. If it's like a decimal point and then 20 zeros and then a 1, it'd be easier to write 1 times 10 to the negative 21, technically, right? That's scientific notation. And the idea is, at a certain point, if I've got 1 quadrillion, I don't really care if I've got 1 quadrillion and 1 or 1 quadrillion and 5, right? One quadrillion is enough.
It's the problem like baseball seasons. Once you have so many games, one pitch just matters so little.
At a certain point. Or for me, I'm sorry if there's anime fans listening, but there's a very popular show called One Piece that literally has over 1,000 episodes, and people are obsessed. And I'm like, most of those episodes cannot matter. They just can't. I'm sorry.
They can't matter.
Most of it must be a waste of time.
If all 1,000 episodes mattered, then that Wikipedia page would be the biggest page on Wikipedia.
Be insane.
Because every episode would have to have not just a synopsis, but here's the major plot point that happens here. And they can't all be major plot points. They cannot.
I don't care how long I live. 1,000 important things are not going to happen to me, okay? And I'm a person with a full lifespan.
Don't sell yourself short, Julian. Come on.
Okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to get close.
You're going to get 100 really important things to happen in your life. That's maybe 1 a year, maybe 1.5 a year, depending on how long you want to live.
Hopefully I'm lucky. Okay. So, at a certain point in computer science, they realized that we don't necessarily need to have digits representing every single value, right? What if we had a decimal point and we basically tell the computer where to put this decimal point and then use the binary version of scientific notation. Also, I should correct myself. I can hear the email coming in already. Because we're dealing with base 2, it's not a decimal point. Decimal means base 10.
Yeah.
It's a binary point. Or if you just want to use the generic term, it's the radix point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Radix.
Ooh,
Cool.
bust that out at your next party.
Good band name.
I'll tell you something. The
Radix point.
members of the gender that you're attracted to love when you bring up the radix point.
Radix point. Again, good band name.
Good band name.
Good band name.
Good band name. Solid band name. So they had this idea of, okay, we'll basically use scientific notation, but with our base 2 system. And then you have this issue of, okay, well, how do we tell the computer where to put that decimal point? So the system they came up with is basically, all right, we'll set aside a certain number of bits. Let's say 32 bits, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll have one of those, the first bit, actually represent whether it's positive or negative, right? If it's a 0, it'll be positive. It's a 1, it'll be negative. And then the next 7 bits, those zeros and ones, those will tell the computer the exponent of like the 2 that will multiply the rest of the number by, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then the remaining, if we've got 32 bits and we've used 8, so the remaining 24 bits or 3 bytes, those will represent the actual number itself with zeros and ones. But because of those digits set aside for the exponent, now we've got a ton of variability. We can have like really large numbers, or if our exponent is negative, we can have really small numbers.
Yeah,
right?
That gives you that's very clever. I didn't know that. That's really cool. And in scientific notation, when you're writing these numbers, you do something very similar. You don't actually write 2.7 times 10 to the negative 17th. You usually write 2.7e and then the exponent. You're even in science.
There's
you're
a shorthand
it.
there even. Yeah. Exactly. And so getting back to the exponents though, a negative exponent, because if people forget their math, that just means that you take, the number that you're exponing and you put it on the bottom of a fraction. And so now we can represent more than just integers too. And that's another problem with our unary system. How do we represent fractions there? How do we represent, things with a decimal point? It's really, I don't know how you do it and still stay true to a unary system. But with base 2, there's ways to do it.
Yeah.
Now, here's where our problem with precision kind of comes in with this floating point method, right? Is because I've allocated a set number of bits to represent like the actual number and then a set number of bits to represent the exponent, but I've limited it to a total of these 32 bits. At a certain point, if a number is more complex, if it's a really big, long number and I want to store all of it, I just can't.
Yeah.
I just can't actually use it. And to make matters even worse, we don't have a way of representing 0.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They did a lot of clever tricks I won't get into. What we can do with this system, though, is get really close to 0. We can do 2 to the negative 127th power.
Yeah.
Which is a very, very small number, but it's not 0. And so you get these weird things. Like I have a program called MATLAB that engineers use for doing like complex calculations. They use it for like matrices and doing linear algebra. But because it uses this floating point system to do calculations, you get these weird quirks that pop up sometimes, like it'll return a value for negative 0 because it's rounding off. It's saying, listen, this number is so small that to me, I don't have enough bits set aside to distinguish it from 0. So we'll call it 0. But that first bit is still a 1 that tells me it's negative. So guess what? Your answer is negative 0.
Right. It's like it's coming at 0 from the negative side.
Yeah.
But it's not. Yeah. But
and for me, it's too close. And you can get more precise by allocating more bits. So the 32 bits that the IEEE set aside, that standard is single precision floating point. If you have 64 bits, then you can have 11 bits set aside for the exponent of the, the 2 that you're multiplying, whatever the rest of it is. The rest of it, by the way, is called the mantissa. Another fun fact. If you love vocab words,
that would be Radix Point's first album. Debut album.
Mantissa. It's true. Actually, that would be thematic. That would be appropriate.
Oh, yeah. Really good.
Yeah. And so if you have 11 points set aside for the exponent and, the remaining 52 bits for the actual number, you can get a lot closer to like 0 or whatever, and you can have much larger numbers as well, and that's double precision floating point and so on and so forth.
Whoa.
Yeah. Sounds complicated. But all it's saying is like, you've got enough computer memory set aside that your numbers are going to be probably close enough to whatever it is that you want.
Yeah.
At this
They're
point.
just more precise.
Yeah.
It's more precise. You could do these calculations with, fewer bits, but they're not going to be as precise.
Yeah.
You're not going to have as many representative numbers.
And you could do it with more bits, but it won't be as an efficient use of your hardware, right? You could set aside a lot more bits.
It could take longer. It could, use more power, whatever.
You'd need...
So you want to balance the hardware that you need to do the job that you're trying to do without overbuilding or underbuilding.
Right. But
cool.
The funny kind of side effect of all this that I didn't realize, because I think when everybody thinks of computers, we think of them as so exacting, right?
Yes.
Like, so
Yeah.
precise. And the truth is, they are designed to operate in some level of ambiguity. To go like, you know what? It's really, really close to 3, so I'm going to say it's 3. But it might be the actual value that you've calculated might be somewhere between 3 and then like a little bit more than 3, but indistinguishable to the computer. And so it goes, all right, it's 3. That's good enough.
It's 3.00000. Oh, I'm out of memory. It's 3.
It's 3. It's 3.
There could be a whole bunch of numbers after that. It's like it could be 3.00000, and that's the end of your bits. And the next digit would have been a 9. But I assume it would round up then, but it might not even know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Too bad.
That's really neat.
Yeah. So if we try and use the same very clever floating point system for a unary computer, and we're staying true to unary, I think we get into a lot of trouble, right?
Yeah.
If we're, we can maybe save a lot of bits by having like our base to some exponent. Trace, what is 1 to any power?
1.
It's still 1.
So
it doesn't get any bigger.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Or it doesn't get any smaller. You can't go fractional. So you
can't like make it negative.
Yeah. You can't have this system like we do with base 2, where you say, okay, some of this will just be like the most important figures, the most significant digits, and then the rest of it will just say like where to put that decimal point. No, it's not possible with a strictly unary-based system. So if you want to do any calculations, you have to represent the whole number with bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm calculating populations. One of the first, I did this work with the Franklin Institute. One of the earlier uses of computing by the U.S. government or by government contracting, U.S. government was in census calculations. So you have millions of humans and you're calculating all of this stuff about them, their ages, their incomes, where they live, where they're from, and you're representing all of that with what? Like you have 143 million people. You have to represent it with 143 million bits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's extremely inefficient. I've got MATLAB pulled up. It doesn't matter what number I punch into it. It always is going to have 64 bits of memory used up. Not a lot. And it can be anything from very, very, very close to 0 to the max number that it can calculate is 1.7977 times 10 to the 308th power. Very large. Yeah,
that's
which
quite large.
It's the base 10 equivalent of 2 to the 1024th power. Which if you could see all the binary, it would make sense why it's that, because those are all multiples of 2. Yeah, but if you want to be that exact, can't do it. Just can't do it. So basically, is a unary computing system possible? Theoretically, yes. It is just a massively inefficient waste of computing power, especially when you consider that the exact same circuitry, you could just change like the standard and tell the computer to do, something different with these 1s and 0s, and you instantly have upgraded to binary.
Right.
Yeah. It would take just a little rethink of like how the computer manipulates numbers and stuff, but that's it. Now with the same on or off switches, you've got binary, you've saved yourself a lot of time and space. So there'd be no reason to actually have this unary system. I did ask Greg while I had him on the line about using other bases, because Greg said something interesting.
That was my next question.
Yay!
Why are we using binary and not... I've always wondered, like, we're trying to compress data and make it smaller. Wouldn't it make sense to just write it in a different base? Would that make it easier? I don't know. I honestly don't know. as you started with, and you said computers are basically magic at some level, that is how I feel. Like, I've been building computers and working with them and thinking about them for 20 years, but I'm not a computer scientist, so I don't understand them on that level.
Right. Well, let me see if I can replace some of that magic with some science knowledge. So I asked Greg, could we use base 3? And the thing that prompted this for me was he was describing how the circuitry in the computer works, how the transistor on-off gates, the voltages that they allow through, and how the computer interprets that. And the transistors, when the voltage going through them is 2 volts or below, the computer interprets that as a 0. When it's 10 volts or above, that's a 1. Does something stick out to you there?
No.
There's
a big gap.
There's a gap. There's a gap between 2 volts and 10 volts. Right? Between
like an
a 0
gap.
and a 1. Exactly. There's an 8-volt gap there. And so I asked Greg, well, why couldn't we have, between 2 and 10 represent a 1, and then 10 and up represent a 2, and then you've got base 3. And Greg told me that the idea is you actually need some robustness, some resilience, or integrity would be the terms used in computer science, to the circuitry. Because computers don't exist in a perfectly shielded vacuum independent from the rest of the universe. We're getting bombarded with electromagnetic rays, with solar radiation, with charged particles from solar winds. And these things, as they pass through the circuitry of your computer, actually have the ability to add or reduce voltage going through those transistors. And so you need that gap so you don't accidentally flip bits and get incorrect value. There have been instances of this actually with like some voting machines. I'm not casting aspersions on elections or saying they're rigged or anything. No, but there was, I remember a long time ago listening to some investigation where in some local election that was using some voting machines, somebody basically, like, they knew exactly how many people should vote, right?
Yeah.
They had like the paper ballots to double check them right because it was a well-designed system to make sure that everything was above board. And for some reason, one candidate had won by 1,024 more votes than they should have, than there were people who were
What an
voting.
auspicious number.
What an interesting number. Exactly,
Yeah.
because as we talked about, 1,024 is a multiple of 2. It's 2 to the 10th power.
Right.
So that means one bit somewhere in this machine got flipped, and it was in that 2 to the 10th power place, and so it just added 1,024 votes to their total. Now, on Earth, we have, the magnetosphere that protects us from a lot of this incoming solar radiation.
Yeah.
This is even more of an issue in space.
I was going to say, I've heard about this because of space shielding.
Exactly, where satellites or, computers on the ISS, they have to be more shielded because the risk of these charged particles flipping a bit and completely screwing up calculations is much higher. It's much more likely to occur.
And we're not talking about calculations like, how far away is that star? Or what kind of science are we doing? We're talking about calculations like, how much fuel should I be using right now?
Yeah.
Should I be using this much fuel every few seconds, like every millisecond? Or should I be using, 1,024 times more fuel for this millisecond?
It's crazy. Like, depending on where that bit gets flipped, we talked about the floating point system where some bits are set aside just for the exponent of that, scientific notation, 2 to the whatever. If the first bit in that gets flipped, you literally, I can't even fathom
exponential increases.
How huge it would be, how big it would be, like 2 to the 127 times bigger of a number that you get.
Or even the very first one could go from you're at a positive exponent to a negative exponent.
Oh, yeah.
And you're essentially going from having, your computer working fine to your computer turning off.
Yeah.
But in a fraction of a second, and then turning right back on again. But that's not good for the computer calculations.
Right. So that is why we have that big gap in the way our computers are designed. It's to build some resilience into the system. But theoretically, absolutely, you could have more values of voltages that you tell the computer, like, okay, between this voltage and this voltage, that's a 2. Between this and this, that's a 3. But there's actually just no need to do it. What we have right now is a good compromise between, the resilience, robustness, and efficiency. And also, and everything would require a rethink too. Like, we've also got these standards that I mentioned that we've laid out on how things work. And guess what? If we go to like any other base, we're going to have to figure that all out again.
Yeah.
And then Greg, because he's very smart, even got into how quantum computers are technically base 4. Because
that's exactly what I was just Googling. I was literally just Googling that because it's a qubit, and they're like, we invented a new kind of computer, so let's do it this way. And that's the quantums are base 4, which is why they're so much more powerful. It's really not necessarily because it has the word quantum in it. It's because it's like, oh well, we're able to do things that we cannot do as easily.
Yes, it uses bits in superposition, so every qubit can have the values of 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, or 1, 1, right?
Yeah.
So you obviously have a lot more efficiency there, but they also, respond to quantum phenomena. And so if you're trying to simulate things that are related to quantum phenomena, like how atoms interact with each other in a protein that's folding, they're great for that.
How a poison is attacking one of your...
Ooh, full circle. Yes, exactly. And they can do it in a reasonable amount of time. Computer problems are classified by how much time they would take to solve and like the computing power you would need to do it. And what you're trying to make your problems solvable in is polynomial time. Basically, less time than the entire friggin' length of the universe, so you can actually get a usable answer,
Yeah.
And so quantum computers are good for problems that are classified as BQP, which is basically you can solve it in polynomial time if you have a quantum computer. Those are the types of problems that they solve. But classical computers, as they're called, that use these binary bits, still great for a ton of stuff. We're getting more and more clever all the time. There's always these articles about, like, is the quantum computer finally better than the classical computer? And then some classical computer scientists is like, actually, I came up with a new way of using the computer, and it's better. So
it's more efficient.
Not there
and we
yet.
Can do this and
yeah. So there's still lots to be done there. But anyway, to get back to Mason's original question, could you do maths using a unary numeral system? Could we do engineering? Could computers still work? Could we get to the moon that way? Yes, but why?
Yeah.
It
Getting to the moon, I think, would be the tough one.
I mean,
Could computers still work? Sure. But they would still be the size of buildings.
Right. And
could we get to the moon?
If eventually, can you imagine we basically scaled down all our electronics to the point we are today, but still hadn't realized, like, oh man, if we just switch from unary to binary, that would really make things easier.
Yeah.
The Apollo 11 computer had a stack overflow problem, right? Where as it was landing, there's just too much data was coming in, and it set off every alarm in the lander. So now imagine that thing was basically 2 popsicle sticks taped together. Imagine that trying to do calculations where, again, the data is worse than exponentially bigger.
Yeah.
Because of how you're storing it.
I just Googled it, and Apple has the M4 processor or whatever. It has 28 billion transistors.
Mm-hmm.
So it can store a number up to 28 billion.
Or work with it, right? When we're talking about storage too, we got to think about,
I guess, RAM. It can
like
work
memory.
with a number up to 28 billion. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not very big.
Nope.
Relative to what you might need to go to the moon?
Nope, especially considering, again, for a whole 64 bits, I can represent 1.79 times 10 to the 308th power.
That is much bigger than 28 billion.
Yeah, a little bit.
Which would be what? It would be 2.8
times 10 to the 9. Yeah.
So it's like pretty small, relatively. Yeah.
10 to the 299 bigger. Yeah, that's better.
That's a lot bigger. That's a lot bigger. Wow. That's cool, man. I learned so much from that.
I loved your Princess Bride segment. It was
Thank you.
It was
this is a great episode.
So pop culture-y. Mine was so mathy. I mean, I love it.
I liked both. I thought they worked so well together because I got this like pop culture hit and I got this math hit.
Yeah.
I hope the audience feels the same. I swear I'm not talking about this to like pump the audience up as much as I'm just like, this was fun.
We lure you in with the stuff that is fun and familiar, and then we switch, almost like we were fencing left-handed, and then when you think you know what's going on, bam!
Julian, why are you smiling?
Because I know something you don't know.
Oh, and what is that?
I am not left-handed.
Inconceivable! I had written in my notes, use inconceivable as often as possible.
Do you think that they had that in the liner notes in the script as well? How many times do you think he's just threw it in there? Rob Reiner,
Anybody want a peanut?
I do.
Well, thank you so much to all of you out there for listening to this episode. If you also thought this episode was very good and enjoyable, tell your friends about it. Anybody you know who likes Princess Bride, one would hope, would enjoy the first half of this episode. And anybody you know who likes math would likely, I'm talking like Vizzini for some reason, like the second half of this episode.
When death is on the line!
On the line? So, please send this episode to your friends and tell them about it. Please leave us a review if you haven't already. You can do that on any app that you are listening to this episode on, but the big apps like Spotify and Apple are the ones that people go to look at when they're looking for reviews. And reviews really help new listeners find episodes and find the shows that they want to listen to and spend their time on. So thank you so much if you have left us a review. Thank you so much if you have submitted a question to us as well. So thanks so much for listening to this episode of That's Absurd, Please Elaborate. The show was created and written and produced and hosted and whatevered by my friend here, Julian Huguet.
And my friend over there, Trace Dominguez.
It was also produced and edited by our wonderful and wonderfully talented giant Fezzik. No, Kyle Sisk. It was Kyle.
We call him the poison editor because he keeps a little vial of poison by his computer.
Just in case.
In case the episode's really bad and he needs a way out.
He's just like, I'm out of here. Sometimes he's editing the episode and he's like, this is the cliffs of insanity.
Yeah, we're getting there. Special thanks to listeners who submitted the questions featured in this episode. Mason and Tessa, if you'd like to submit a question, look for the form in our show notes or email us at hello@that'sabsurdshow.com or visit that website, that'sabsurdshow.com/ask. Or you could even call us. We have a phone number now. It's 302-TAPE-SHOW. That's 302-TAPESHO.
Thank you for those things. Finally, also a special thanks to anyone who may be listening currently on Nebula. Nebula listeners get access to ad-free versions of our episodes. Sometimes they get episodes a little early, but either way, joining Nebula supports the show. It supports other independent creators. If you've never heard of Nebula before, go to go.nebula.tv/that'sabsurdshow. If you sign up there, you can get a discount and you support the show by doing it. If you don't want to do that, that's okay too. We just wanted to give them a shout out because they're listening and supporting at the same time.
And remember, build up a tolerance to snake venom.
And remember, when a pirate hands you a vial, don't go... Waft, Vizzini!
Inconceivable!